Revenge with Anjo.
Lydia Rowan never imagined that the last words her son would say to her would feel like a closing door. "You'll be safe here, Mom," he whispered, before sliding the bolt from the outside of Silver Pine residential home. The click was soft, almost polite, but to Lydia, it felt like the final note of a life she no longer recognized. At 68, she stood alone in the cold lobby, hands trembling, not from age, but from shock she couldn't yet swallow. Her daughter-in-law, Fiona, placed Lydia's phone on the counter with a bright smile for the nurse, as if she were dropping off a pet. "She won't be needing this," Fiona said. Lydia didn't cry. She didn't beg. She simply listened to their footsteps fade, each step pulling her further from the home she'd built with her husband, from the garden she tended for decades, from the life she believed she still belonged to. When the door shut, the silence wrapped around her like a new, unwanted skin. Sitting on a hard plastic chair, Lydia reached into her coat, looking for warmth, and instead touched a smooth, folded slip. A lottery ticket, still intact. The nurse, a red-lipped woman named Kelly, greeted her with a too-sweet voice. "Welcome to Silver Pine, Mrs. Rowan. We care for you like family." Lydia gave a thin smile. "Family," she echoed, the word tasting like a lie. Another staffer collected her handbag, keys, credit card, wallet, all taken for safekeeping. Lydia wondered, "And my dignity? Who will keep that safe?" She said nothing. Sometimes silence is the last form of self-respect. They led her to room 108, a narrow space with peeling paint and a bed too tightly tucked for anyone with real legs to stretch in. Someone had placed an old photo of her late husband, Samuel, on the windowsill, as if one memory could replace the home she'd lost. Lydia touched the frame gently. "They moved me like luggage, Sam," she whispered. The first night offered no sleep, just hallway lights leaking through doors, nurses' rubber soles scraping endlessly, someone crying down the hall, "I want to go home," and silence from the world outside. But when she slid her hand into her coat again, fingertips brushing the lottery ticket, something inside her sparked. A quiet rebellion, almost like hope. Morning brought schedules, physical therapy, art classes, medication rounds. None were optional. In the activity room, Lydia met Hazel, an 85-year-old former librarian with bright eyes sharper than her voice. Hazel leaned close and whispered, "First time?" Lydia nodded. "Well," Hazel said, "no one wants to stay here, but many forget they once wanted to leave." Beside her sat Nora, 91, nearly blind but painfully observant. "Careful what you say," Nora murmured. "They prefer the obedient over the intelligent." Lydia took their advice in silence. Lunch was watery potatoes and rubbery chicken. "If you complain," Hazel whispered, "they mark you down as a problem patient." Lydia forced down the food, tasting the blandness of how they wanted her to live. Neutral, flavorless, silent. That night, while the rain tapped against the window, she pulled out the lottery ticket again and stared at the numbers. Her fingers trembled. "What if this means something?" she whispered into the dim glow. Not a miracle, just a second chance. And in that moment, she realized, they could lock a door, but they could not lock her mind. By the third day, Lydia started observing the staff like a strategist studying an opponent. Nurses who smiled too much. Carts that rolled down halls on predictable schedules. Cameras placed at each end of the corridor, but blocked by a large wall clock in the middle. At 11 p.m., she saw Megan, the night nurse, slip away 3 times. Once to deliver meds, once to check oxygen tanks, and once, Lydia suspected, to call her boyfriend. Each time the hallway emptied. Each time opportunity flickered. On the 4th night, she approached the front desk with a shaky voice. "I need to make a call. I forgot to turn off my heater at home." Megan frowned. "But you don't live there anymore." "My neighbor has a spare key," Lydia insisted. "Please." With a sigh, Megan pushed the phone over. Lydia dialed, not her neighbor, but the state lottery hotline. She read the numbers slowly, carefully. When the confirmation tone beeped, her breath caught. The voice on the line announced what she hardly dared believe. Confirmed winning ticket. Prize, $102 million. Lydia stood frozen. Her pulse thundered. She whispered, "Sam, I think we're free." She returned to her room silently and tucked the ticket beneath her mattress. Hazel snored softly in the next room. Nora coughed in hers. But Lydia sat awake, pulse racing. She had taught children for decades, math, reading, writing, yet never had numbers change her life like this. The next morning, the staff bustled in with forced cheer. "Watercolor painting today." Lydia smiled and declined. "I'm waiting for the administrator," she said politely. They assumed she wanted to complain. They didn't know she was planning an escape. After breakfast, she opened a small notebook she found in the drawer and wrote, "Day 6. Ticket confirmed. $102 million. Do not trust anyone." Hazel watched her later with curious eyes. "You look like someone with a secret," she whispered. Lydia simply replied, "I'm remembering who I am." That afternoon, Lydia called her son Daniel from the hallway phone. She spoke only one sentence before hanging up. "I found something you'll want to know about." Tiffany, the nurse, raised an eyebrow. "Everything all right?" "Oh yes," Lydia said sweetly. "Just hearing my boy's voice." But inside, she was laying the groundwork for a storm she knew would come. 2 days later, Lydia walked to the rear garden with a folded newspaper in hand. She spotted a small advertisement on the last page. Benson and Cole. Discreet estate planning for seniors. Absolute confidentiality. First consultation free. The words seemed to pulse on the page. Quietly, she tore out the clipping and tucked it into her sleeve. At the basement exit, where the cell phone signal was strongest, she dialed the number. "Benson and Cole, this is Attorney Andrew Benson." His voice was steady, low, and calm. "How can I help you?" Lydia swallowed hard. "I need a private trust. My identity must remain confidential." "May I have your name?" "Lydia," she hesitated. "Weston." A safe alias. "Where can we meet?" he asked. "I'm in a care facility. I can only meet in the garden." "Then I'll come to you," he said. Friday, 2:30. That night, Lydia slept with one hand under her mattress, feeling the envelope. Not out of fear, but resolve. She whispered to the darkness, "They put me here thinking I had no choices. But Sam, I have one now." On Friday afternoon, Lydia dressed carefully in her old beige cardigan and combed her hair until it lay smooth and tidy. At 2:20 p.m., she took a seat in the garden under the maple trees. Her heart thudded with each passing minute. At 2:32, a sleek navy sedan pulled in. A tall man in a gray suit stepped out, carrying a black briefcase. "Mrs. Weston?" he asked gently. Lydia nodded. They sat at a small iron table under the shade. "Tell me what happened," he said. She explained everything. The forced admission, her son's control of her finances, the house she may never see again. Then she slid the envelope to him. "I found this days before they brought me here." He examined the ticket, then checked the numbers on his phone. His brows lifted slightly. "Mrs. Weston, this is real. Very real." Lydia's voice trembled. "Can you protect it?" "Only if you follow every instruction," he said. "We will create a blind trust. Your legal name for the money will be Elena Westfield, no connection to Lydia Rowan at all." She exhaled slowly, feeling a door creak open inside her. Andrew drafted papers quickly, explaining each step. "We'll revoke your son's power of attorney, create a new will, and move everything under the alias." He paused. "Who is your beneficiary?" Lydia smiled softly. "My granddaughter. Her name is Amelia Ross, 21, the only one who has treated me with kindness. Then she'll receive her share at 30, or sooner if she needs help with school or a home." Lydia nodded. "Good. I want her to have choices. More than I ever had." She signed each document carefully, hand trembling but steady in purpose. When the final page dried, Andrew packed everything neatly. "Within 72 hours, he said, "you will be in control again, completely." Lydia stared at the maple leaves swaying in the wind. For the first time since walking into Silver Pine, she felt sunlight not just on her skin, but inside her chest. Before he left, Andrew looked her in the eyes. Mrs. Weston, Lydia, I've helped many clients, but few fight this quietly. You're strong. She gave a small, sad smile. Strength is what grows when you have no other choice. 3 days later, a cream envelope appeared on her tray, addressed to L.W. Kelly. The nurse giggled. Probably junk mail. Lydia took it calmly, waited until her room was empty, then opened it. Inside was a typed letter. Ticket verified. Blind trust activated. New alias, Elena Westfield. Net total after taxes, $65.8 million. Lydia touched the page with trembling fingers. Not because of the amount, but because it meant freedom. Later that day, Tiffany asked with a bright smile, "Good news today?" Lydia simply said, just remembering an old recipe. She was becoming skilled at harmless answers. That evening, she updated her notebook. Day 12. Blind trust active. POA revoked. Amelia protected. When Andrew called, his voice was steady. Do not contact the lottery or any bank directly. One mistake can expose you. I understand, she replied softly. I've lived long enough in the dark. I won't ruin my own dawn. That night, she pressed her fingers against the new legal documents stored beneath her coat. And for the first time in years, her heartbeat felt steady, not from fear, but from reclaimed power. The days at Silver Pine began to blur, but Lydia learned how to exist without being noticed. She attended meals, nodded politely, spoke only when required. She watched how the staff behaved, how Kelly smiled only when irritated, how Owen the cleaner snuck drinks from his cart, how Mr. Kellen, the administrator, touched every shoulder as if claiming ownership over the residence. Silver Pine is your second home, he once said. Lydia had smiled softly. Funny, she replied, because I don't have a key. His laugh faltered. Lydia became a shadow. Present, polite, invisible. Hazel often whispered, invisibility is power, dear. When they don't see you, they don't lock you tight. One Saturday morning, Tiffany announced, your son is here. Lydia looked up. There stood Daniel, immaculate shirt, forced smile, fake warmth. He placed a bag of waffles on her table. Thought you'd like these. Lydia nodded. I used to, she said. After small talk, Daniel leaned in. Mom, about the house property taxes are high. We should sell it. The money will go into our joint account. Lydia stared at him softly. A joint account? Like the house paperwork? His smile cracked. Daniel shifted uneasily. Mom, I'm only trying to help. Lydia smiled coldly. You mean take? His face paled. What do you mean? She folded her hands neatly. I found a paper in my coat. Something you'd be very interested in. His eyes widened. What paper? Her smile deepened. Nothing urgent. I'll keep it safe. Panic flickered across his face before he masked it. Mom, don't play games. I'm trying to protect you. Protection, she said softly. Is that what you call locking me in a facility? Daniel stood abruptly. I have to go. Drive safe, she said sweetly. When he left, Lydia sat in silence, feeling both sorrow and victory. Hazel approached her later. Something happened? Lydia shook her head. Just remembering an old lesson. When people think you're weak, let them. That night, she wrote in her notebook. Daniel visited. Showed his hand. Fear exposed. Another thread pulled loose. Outside her window, the wind rustled through the pines like a voice saying, keep going. That evening, her granddaughter Amelia called in a whisper. Grandma, Dad says they're selling your car. The silver one Grandpa bought you. Lydia closed her eyes. I know, she whispered. It's all right. No, it's not, Amelia insisted. They shouldn't do this. Sweetheart, Lydia soothed. Thank you for telling me. After ending the call, she sat in the dark listening to the faint lavender-scented breeze slipping through the window seam. She opened her notebook and added, the car. Another brick removed. In the morning, she found Hazel awake and sipping mint tea. If you had the key to the front door, Hazel asked suddenly, what's the first thing you'd do? Lydia closed her eyes. Open the windows wide and walk to the nearest bus stop. Hazel smiled softly. Then hold that image. One day you'll do it. Later that afternoon, Lydia passed Hazel's room and found the door closed, the nameplate gone. The bed stripped bare. Tiffany's smile was forced. She was transferred. Lydia continued walking, but by noon she returned and stared at the empty room. Until tears fell silently. That night she wrote only 2 words. Hazel's gone. Hazel's absence haunted her. It reminded her how quickly lives here disappeared. No goodbyes, no explanations, just vanished. If I don't leave, she whispered, I'll fade like her. The next morning, she scribbled Andrew's phone number on a slip of paper and tucked it under Nora's pillow. If anyone ever asks where I went, Lydia whispered, give them this. Nora nodded slowly. Not everyone who leaves is lost, she murmured. Lydia postponed her meeting with Andrew for a week. She needed to think things through, not out of fear, but to decide what freedom meant now. In the garden, she stared at the sky turning silver blue and traced her fingers along Hazel's old teacup. If I truly had the key, she whispered, I would unlock the door and go find a window, any window, that belongs to me. That night, she poured her pills into the trash, brewed mint tea for herself and the ghost of Hazel, and lifted the cup gently. You were right, she whispered. Imagination is the first step to freedom, and I'm ready for the second. The next morning brought a silent determination. She stitched the inner pocket of her coat, the pocket where she kept the trust papers, and checked the seams twice. She straightened her hair, smoothed her cardigan, and walked the hall slowly, observing everything with the clarity Hazel once praised. She realized that Silver Pine was not simply a place of care, it was a system. A system designed to keep people quiet, compliant, and forgotten. But Lydia was no longer part of that system. She had become something else. A quiet flame hiding beneath ash. That afternoon, a courier dropped off a thick Harborstone Realty envelope for Fiona at the house, but it also reached Silver Pine. Lydia smiled when Tiffany handed it to her unknowingly. Andrew had helped her orchestrate this letter, an offer valuing her home at over $1.4 million. A letter addressed to Fiona's name, not hers. A letter designed to ignite chaos. And it worked. That evening, Amelia called with breathless excitement. Gran, Dad, and Mom are freaking out. They got a letter offering to buy the house. Dad says don't touch it. Mom says sell it. What's happening? Lydia simply replied, a reminder, sweetheart. Nothing belongs to people who didn't earn it. That night, Daniel called. Mom, did you get a letter from Harborstone? They want to buy the house. It must have been delivered by mistake. I'm handling it. Lydia's voice was calm. But I'm still the owner. Shouldn't they talk to my lawyer? Silence. Long and heavy. Mom, you have a lawyer? Lydia laughed gently. A real one. And he doesn't lie to me. Daniel hung up abruptly. The next morning, Lydia asked Tiffany to print a letter. I have not authorized anyone to sell property under my name. Signed, Margaret Rowan. She left the envelope on the administrator's desk, exactly where she knew it would be noticed. That afternoon, Andrew called her. Clara called my office, he said. She's panicking. Lydia smiled softly. Let them stew. The truth will come to them. By sunset, Daniel called again, voice cracking. Mom, please meet with me. Lydia stared at the pine trees gently swaying. If you want to talk, she said, talk to my lawyer. That night, her notebook recorded. Day 18. They're falling apart. I'm just beginning. 3 days later, Silver Pine was filled with unfamiliar scents, designer perfume, expensive hairspray. Daniel and Fiona arrived dressed as though to impress a judge. Mother, Fiona chirped, you look wonderful. We want you to come home. Lydia smiled. I'm not dead, she said softly. Don't bury me in kindness. Daniel forced a laugh and pulled a chair. Mom, the house, let's make things easy. A joint fund. Who holds the key? Lydia asked. I do, he replied quickly. But for you. Lydia lifted Fiona's manicured hand off hers. If awards existed for fake kindness, she said calmly, you'd win first place. The room fell silent. Tiffany paused at the doorway, unsure if she should intervene. Daniel finally whispered, Mom, please, I'm not angry, she said. I'm simply done pretending. Fiona stormed out. Daniel followed slowly. I'll be back, he said. Next time, Lydia replied, bring your real face. That night, Lydia sat by the window, watching the moonlight slide across the floor. She no longer felt trapped. She felt powerful. And power, she realized, didn't need to shout. A week later, Daniel returned, this time without pretense, no suit, no forced smile. He sank into the chair across from her. Mom, I'm sorry. Lydia didn't speak. He continued, Clara said you weren't thinking clearly. She said, don't blame her. Lydia interrupted gently. No one forced you. His eyes glistened. I don't know how to fix this. Lydia looked at the man her son had become, a man shaped by fear, pride, and convenience. Fix yourself, she said quietly. Not me. He nodded slowly, stood, and bowed his head. When the door closed behind him, Lydia felt no triumph, only peace. She knew now that separating herself from him wasn't cruelty. It was survival. That night, she wrote only one line in her notebook. Truth spoken. Burden released. Outside, the pines rustled like hands applauding her courage. 3 weeks after Daniel's visit, Andrew called early one morning. Lydia, he said, the court date is set. Next Thursday. Lydia took a deep breath. Do you think they'll listen to an old woman? They'll listen, Andrew replied. Because this time, you're not pleading. You're reclaiming. When Thursday arrived, Andrew picked her up in a sleek black sedan. The courtroom was quiet, small, with sunlight spilling across wooden floors. Daniel sat on the opposite side, head bowed. Clara wasn't there. When the judge entered, Lydia felt her pulse steady. Andrew presented evidence, emails, financial records, witness statements, medical evaluations proving her perfect lucidity. The judge listened carefully. Then he looked at Lydia. Mrs. Rowan, do you want to add anything? Lydia stood. Her voice did not shake. Your Honor, I am not confused. I was not rescued. I was hidden, locked away in the name of love. Today, I'm here for one thing, to take back my name. Silence filled the room. Even Daniel lowered his gaze. The judge turned to Daniel. Your response. Daniel's voice cracked. I thought she wasn't safe. The doctor said, do you have proof? The judge asked. Daniel had none. After reviewing the evidence, the judge removed his glasses and spoke clearly. Effective immediately, all powers of attorney held by Mr. Daniel Rowan are revoked. Mrs. Rowan is recognized as the sole legal owner of all her assets, including the property at 12 Rowan Street. The gavel struck once. Quiet but final. Lydia closed her eyes for a moment. Not to cry, but to breathe. Andrew touched her arm gently. It's done. No, she whispered. Now it begins. Outside, sunlight washed over her face like a blessing she had waited months to feel. Andrew drove her toward a small lakeside cottage he had arranged for her. When she stepped out, the wind from the water touched her cheeks, carrying scents of lavender and pine. This, Andrew said softly, is yours. No one can take it. Inside, a pot of mint tea waited on the table, Hazel's favorite. Lydia sat, allowing herself a single tear. The first night in the cottage, Lydia didn't lock the door. She lay in soft sheets, listening to the lake whisper against the shore. No footsteps. No bells. No forced kindness. Only freedom. In the morning, she brewed coffee, toasted bread, and ate in silence, the good kind. Then she wrote 3 letters. The first was to Amelia, sealed with a silver ribbon. My darling granddaughter, she wrote, I leave you not money alone, but the right to choose your life. When you're ready, the key in this envelope will open this cottage. The second letter was to Daniel, firm, respectful, final. Do not contact me. I wish you peace, but I will no longer live in places where my voice is taken. The third letter was to herself, a promise, My name is Lydia Rowan. I choose my life. When she dropped Amelia's letter at the post office, she handed a small note to the mail carrier. Deliver this to Nora, she whispered. Only her. The courier nodded with solemn understanding. Lydia stepped into sunlight, feeling lighter than she had in years. Days passed softly at the cottage. Lydia walked beside the lake every morning, soaking her feet in the cool water. She planted mint and lavender near the porch. She brewed tea at dusk and read old novels at night. But she wasn't done. She reached out to the Highland Senior Foundation, the charity her husband once admired. This is Lydia Rowan, she said. Or, for funding purposes, Elena Westfield. The coordinator paused. How can we help you? I want to start a program, Lydia said, voice strong. A hotline for seniors trapped in abusive or manipulative family situations. Legal support. Emotional support. Someone to hear them. The coordinator was stunned. We can set this up immediately, ma'am. Lydia smiled softly. Good. Call its second voice. Later that afternoon, she created the Samuel Rowan Grant, a fund for people aged 55 and older who wanted to learn new skills. She remembered Samuel once saying, "It's sad when older people are left with nothing but the past." She set the grant paperwork on her desk and whispered, "This is for you." One evening, Amelia called, voice trembling. "Grandma, I got your letter. I don't know how to thank you." Lydia's heart warmed. "No thanks," she said. "Just live well." Amelia sniffled. "I miss you. Can I visit?" One day, Lydia replied gently. "But not yet. I need to finish building this new version of me." Amelia whispered, "I'm proud of you." After the call, Lydia wrote to Daniel one last time, without anger. Not forgiving him, but freeing herself. "Life will teach you what I could not. I hope it teaches you gently." She CC'd Andrew, to file, not for spite. The next morning, she walked into town and gave the mail carrier a small folded note. "For Nora," she said. "This is her lifeline." As she walked back to the cottage, the wind carried hints of pine and salt from the lake, scents that meant peace. 3 weeks later, the document for her alias arrived, formal permission to use the name, Elena Westfield, professionally. She held the paper, smiling softly. "2 names," she whispered. "One for the world. One for my peace." That afternoon, she walked barefoot to the lake, the sky painted orange and gold. The water shimmered like glass. She whispered to the wind, "Samuel, I found my voice again." She picked up a smooth stone and tossed it lightly. It skipped 3 times before sinking, like the past never gone, but no longer sharp. That evening, she lit a candle on her desk and wrote the final entry in a fresh notebook. Money cannot buy time, but it can buy silence. And silence can be healing. She closed the notebook slowly, hand over her heart. Her pulse was steady, peaceful, enough. In October, Lydia returned to Silver Pine. Not to stay, but to leave something behind. She stood outside the iron gate, its white paint peeling like old memories. She did not step inside. Instead, she handed the security guard a thick envelope labeled, "To the legal department, no reply needed." Inside were senior rights documents, abuse hotline numbers, and a handwritten letter. For anyone who believes they have no voice. "I once lived in room 108. You are not alone." She didn't sign her real name. Only someone who found the key. She walked away, without looking back. Some doors shouldn't be reopened. Back at her cottage, she hung her coat, brewed tea, and sat on the porch as carpenters repaired her old house at Rowan Street. The porch swing creaked again, the same sound Samuel once called the heartbeat of home. That evening, she poured tea into 2 cups, one for herself, one for Hazel's memory. "For you," she whispered. "You taught me to imagine freedom and then to take it." She opened her notebook and read aloud. "No one can take your voice and call it protection. No one has the right to lock your life and call it love." The wind shimmered through the trees, as if agreeing. She closed her eyes and listened. She had walked through betrayal, silence, fear, and found something stronger on the other side, herself. Lydia began spending her mornings helping neighbors with small tasks, gardening, reading letters, sharing mint tea. People in the small lakeside community grew fond of the gentle older woman who walked with straight posture and wise eyes. No one knew about the fortune. They only knew her kindness. One afternoon, a new neighbor asked, "Where do you find such peace?" Lydia smiled. "I didn't find it," she said. "I built it." That night, she updated the Second Voice hotline with more funding and new volunteers. Calls began coming in, quiet, frightened voices. People who sounded just like she once did. Lydia replied to each request with gentle strength. "You're not alone," she said. "You still have rights. And you can stand again." Amelia finally visited in early November. She stood at the porch, eyes wide at the lake and the blooming lavender. "Grandma, this is beautiful." Lydia hugged her tightly. "I saved this place for you." They spent the afternoon baking apple pies, laughing, crying, and sharing stories about Samuel. Amelia sat by the window and whispered, "You're my hero." Lydia smiled softly. Heroes are just people who refuse to stay silent. Before leaving, Amelia placed a hand over Lydia's heart. "You sound happy," she said. "I am," Lydia replied, "for the first time in years." As winter approached, Lydia decorated the cottage with warm lights and mint-scented candles. She received updates from the foundation. The Second Voice hotline had helped 43 seniors escape abusive financial control in its first month. The Samuel Rowan grant funded its first class of elder carpentry students. Lydia smiled at the report. "Samuel," she whispered, "look what we built." She walked to the lake, wrapped in her thick coat, and watched the water turn silver under the December sky. Life had become a quiet, powerful rhythm. A rhythm that belonged only to her. She sat on the porch one evening, sipping warm tea as snowflakes drifted down like tiny blessings. The air smelled of pine and cold water. Birds chirped softly from the trees. Lydia whispered, "If anyone watching this story has ever felt locked away, remember this. You still have a voice. You still have choices. You still matter." She looked toward the lake, its surface shimmering gently. "Tell me where you're listening from," she said softly, as if speaking to every hidden soul. "Every message you leave," she added, "is a key for someone else." Lydia lifted her cup and smiled. The wind skimmed across the water, carrying her words far, maybe farther than she'd ever know. As the light melted into the lake, she whispered the closing sentence of her story. The sentence she waited 68 years to say. "My name is Lydia Rowan. I got my voice back. And now, every choice in my life belongs to me." If you value stories of respect, dignity, and justice, please subscribe. It means more than you know, and it lets me keep sharing the lessons life has carved into me.